Since it was founded in 1987, Tacoar has developed and distributed to various countries the most modern automotive system for light, medium and heavy vehicles, providing the market with a broad range of products like onboard tire pressure gauges, climatizers, automatic and permanent tire balancing. The object of the onboard Tacoar tire pressure gauge is to inform the vehicle's driver of anything untoward in the tire's pressurizing system and keep the system pressurized until it can be repaired. The equipment is easily installed. It is enough to take a certain care. The first step is to see if the equipment is appropriate for the vehicle where it will be installed. On the bench, adjust the Tacoar control display, setting the 1 and 2 pressure dials to the reading indicated by the tire maker. Air adjustment is made through the valves, and the setting of the warning light, red LEDs, and alarm bell is made on site on the pressure gauge itself. Only then is the installation started, locating the Tacoar on the truck's instrument panel, always using the proper tools. Dismounting the truck's instrument panel, always with the proper tools, to allow the duly marked nylon tubes to be passed through. Tube 1 is for the front grid, Tube 2 for the rear grid, and Tube 3 for primary air, each tube being duly led to its point of installation and only then cut. Those nylon tubes will be covered by a protecting hose, where the tube passes by the motor and at points of friction. Only then are they attached with a strap, and with the cabin raised, tubes 2 and 3 are passed through the frame, always alongside the electric cabling. Tube 3 takes primary air from the 4 or 6-way valve, today present in all new vehicles. For older vehicles, consult Tacoar Engineering. To install it, withdraw lid number 24 from the 4 or 6-way valve and place the air outlet connection straight on, not forgetting to put on the thread securing adhesive, which serves to secure and seal. The next step is installing the front grid. Start by drilling the holes in the cabin for attaching the grid. Then the grid is started by placing a T, attaching with strap and a rivet clamp, in this case attaching the tube with rivets in the drilled holes. Always remembering to install the protection hoses on the tube, wherever there is contact or friction with the cabin, its parts and electric installation. Then support L is attached below the front mudguards and the squares are fastened there. The front grid is completed attaching the tubes to the squares. We now go on to the rear grid. Pull tube 2, attaching it to the frame with strap clamps together with the electric cabling as far as the traction axle. Near to the traction, a T is placed for 2-way distribution to the traction wheels. Then another T is installed for 2-way distribution to the truck axle, the tubes below the frame being fastened with rivet clamps. Then the support is fastened to the adequate place on the frame for receiving the ideal square for that type of frame. The rear grid is completed by connecting the tubes to the squares. We remind you that there are vehicles with tip-up mudguards, and then we must place the tube with a double square mudguard support, code 172C. The next step involves the wheels. At the front, Remove the covers of the nuts aligned with the tire's nozzle. Then remove the nuts, put on the flange, and in this case a ruler model, code 086, but which can be of other models according to the vehicle's rims and hubs, often being necessary to drill the flange for installing the stud bolts. For drilling the flanges, taco-R templates are used with the respective table which determines the template, number of holes, and the drill required. Then the kinematic shaft is screwed onto the flange, the outlet nozzle set in the direction of the tire filling nozzle, putting on the lock nut and placing a sealing cap on the other kinematic nozzle. The cap and the valve are withdrawn from the tire nozzle for installing the check valve. The tube should be connected to the kinematics nozzle and the check valve installed on the tire nozzle, also installing the protection hose. For economy purposes, use cut-off pieces of tube on kinematic connections and tire nozzles. The hubcap, springs and pipe set is mounted, placing the nylon tube in the set. Then the nylon tube is connected to the square or to the respective connection if appropriate, tip-up cabins, and to the nozzle of the kinematic shaft, measuring and cutting the nylon tube as needed, then attaching the multipurpose nut, connecting the nylon tube to the hubcap, springs and pipe assembly to the kinematic shaft. Right after the hubcap is placed on the end of the kinematic shaft, fastening with a nut. Finally, the hubcap finish is put on. For the rear wheels, the procedure is as follows. Traction wheels. First, the nuts are removed from the hub for attaching the flange, which can be of various models depending on the vehicle's rims and hubs, and it is often necessary to drill the flange for putting in the stud bolts, also adequated to the various kinds of wheel hub. There the kinematic shaft is screwed on towards the filling nozzles on the two tires. The cap and valve are removed from the nozzle for putting in the check valve. The tube should be connected to the kinematic nozzle and the check valve installed in the tire nozzle, also putting on the protection hose. A curved rotating connection needs to be placed on the outside tire so as to make possible the installing of the check valve. The hubcap, springs and pipe assembly is then mounted, putting the nylon tube in the assembly. Then the nylon tube is connected to the square and to the kinematic shaft nozzle, measuring and cutting the nylon tube according to how it is presented. Then putting on the multi-purpose nut, connecting the hubcap, springs and pipe assembly to the kinematic shaft. Then the hubcap is placed at the end of the kinematic shaft, fastening with a nut. Finally, the hubcap finish is put on. After that, we move on to the truck wheels, removing the original flange from the hub, putting aside the original screws, and also removing the grease to put it on the taco-R flange, which may be of various models according to the vehicle's rims and hubs, and which can be drilled when necessary for putting in stud bolts. After that, the sealing gasket is placed and the taco-R flange is fastened. Then the kinematic shaft is screwed on, directing the outlet nozzles to the tire nozzles. The following procedures are the same as applied to the traction wheels. Once the grids and wheels installation is done, we return to the truck's instrument panel to connect Tube 3 primary air to the panel Tube 2 rear grid to the panel and Tube 1 front grid to the panel. Then the electric cable is connected to the panel. The black cable negative, white cable panel lighting, and the yellow cable positive ignition switch. This wiring is connected to the terminal junction box or to the fuse box. The tachoir panel is attached to the vehicle's instrument panel, and with the tachoir panel turned on, the air supply to the tires is verified by disconnecting the air tube from the check valve on each tire. Finally, the user of the onboard tacho air calibrator is shown how it works. Air cock in position 1, closed. Air cock in position 2, open, pressurizing the grid. Air cock in position 3, depressurizing, releasing air from the grid. Keys 1 and 2 turn the alarm bell on and off.